Hi, my name is Alejandro. Thanks for staying for the last talk of the day. I know we're all tired. I just landed from flight, so I'm super tired, but we're going to get through this. My talk's going to be very different. It's going to be very design-oriented. We're a not-for-profit that focuses on studying how people are using blockchain technologies as money today. So we start with, we're just going to do a little bit away with all of this. We're going to step back from the buzzwords and like the technical foundations of what blockchains are, and I'm going to talk about why we need open money. So this is what I am. This is a 48-year-old baker who is from Venezuela, and to cross the border between Venezuela and Colombia, she had to protect her wealth. And the way she did this is, first, she struggled to convert her money into dollars, which used to be illegal and that used to be penalized. Now, like, things are a little bit more liberalized, but still, there's a lot of, there can be like local punishment for doing so. And then after that, she had to smuggle the money inside her hair. So she did these like elaborate braiding so she could hide it, and that's the way that she would protect her money from being seized at the border. And so this is a small anecdote that illustrates how people are using money in closed economies and collapsing monetary systems. I'm from Venezuela originally, and this is the country where we're focused for our first project. So we practice something that's called human-centered design. This is something that IDEO, the design company, very well known, has kind of kickstarted or at least named it. So we try to empathize with the users. We try to like listen and observe and design thinking, and we try to first get and interview and try to get to know the behaviors and the attitudes of people and what they're using currently, rather than try to come with technology and wave a magic wand and fix all the problems, right? So in a way, what we do is not so much research, but it's more of a search. We're searching for outlier behaviors and attitudes that may inspire future products that we might build on top of amazing technologies like blockchains. So what we did, we did some ethnographic interviews. So we interviewed 11 people in Colombia and 6 people in Venezuela. We didn't actually weren't able to cross the border for logistical reasons and political reasons. But we did some interviews remote, and it's important in these projects that you do as much of the work as possible in person. So we sat down with recent immigrants and we talked through their experiences. We also did a diary study where we kind of tried to understand how the day-to-day life of an average Venezuelan is like. And then we did what we call displacements, which is about how a behavior triggered by, for example, a transfer of cryptocurrency or some prompt that we would give them. What does that look like? And you put people in a position of not knowing what to do, and you try to like understand what they do. So, for example, if you transfer Bitcoin to someone for the first time and they don't know what it is, you can kind of see what their attitudes are, and while it may not inform a product, you can see the common misunderstandings that people have, and that's very useful. And so there's a lot of this after in the process, so a lot of collecting different notes, and all the interviews are coded into these post-it notes, and gathering data, and then trying to arrange this into patterns. So the way we did it was we identified 3 major themes around how people use money and how people want to use money. So the first theme is called confident. So what we've identified is that people, networks of people have replaced the roles of companies and institutions. So when institutions are failing, people go to their networks, and this can mean going to their neighbors or relying more on their family members or their extended family members. It can also mean using things like Facebook groups to try to send money using ads, or like they see an ad and they see like this site right here supports a bunch of banks and it has a cell phone number. It can look kind of sketchy, but if that's the only thing that you can rely on, because there's no way to transfer your money out without using one such thing, this can look semi-legitimate. And then there's a lot of people that use WhatsApp groups and send each other WhatsApp messages saying, hey, I am a money changer and I will change money, this is my rate. And then these networks of people, like, it's kind of self-assemble, and it depends on who you trust and how wide your network is of trust. And that determines who you're able to, or like what kind of financial access you'll be able to have. Yeah, this is another very widely used feature is the WhatsApp status, which is kind of like Instagram stories, but we don't use the WhatsApp status that much in United States or Europe, but in Latin America it's very, very popular because everyone has WhatsApp, and WhatsApp runs on very, very old phones. So a lot of people intermingle their life stories and photos of kids and stuff with offers to buy and sell dollars. And so, to explain a little bit, the way that you would transfer money, between two normal countries, you would just send a wire transfer, right? Like, or you could just set up this like TransferWise. You're going to save some money. It's relatively straightforward. You can just do one move across systems, take the money in Germany, and it arrives in the US. If you want to move money in Venezuela, it's a little bit more complicated because the banks are not allowed to talk to outside banks in Venezuela. So what you have to do is, if you have money in Venezuela, you have to find someone that has an account in Venezuela, that also has a bank account in the United States, let's say, or Germany, and then coordinate with that person and say, okay, I'm going to transfer you the money to your Venezuelan account, and you're going to transfer me the money in my German account. So that means you need a German account to operate. Of course, this is before blockchains existed. You can kind of do the same thing with a Bitcoin transfer. Bitcoin is the most liquid cryptocurrency, so that's the one that we use most often as an example. You can also, there's local Ethereum, which is a site that allows you to do the same with Ether, just a lot less liquid and a lot less mature. But basically, in theory, everyone can have access to these kinds of transfers, but in practice, people want to have money that they consider real money, and often it involves a different jurisdiction. And not everyone has access, as I said. So, second thing, in Venezuela, every transaction is forced to feel like a drug deal. So, since everything is kind of driven underground, because it's problematic to change money around, you have to go to these windows. This is a city at the border between Colombia and Venezuela, and the way you have to do your transfer is because these people aren't technically allowed to send money out of Colombia because they don't have a license to do it, and the Colombian government is also very strict with the way people use banks and so on. They give you a WhatsApp number that will tell you when your transfer is ready, and then you have to hand in the cash to this man right here, and then you have to wait for the transfer to clear, and that will be communicated to you on WhatsApp, and it all feels very sketchy. And a lot of transfers and transactions feel like this, even like when just buying product in Venezuela, there's a scarce product that not everyone can access, and it's regulated, and if you really want to have access to it, you might have to go to a dark alley or just spend some time with some shady characters to be able to do it. So it's even very legitimate and very necessary things to survive are problematic. And then one thing that surprised us was that despite scarcity and economic collapse, some people are thriving. So this is a chronicle from a man we met, let's call him Guillermo. He's an investor, lives in Caracas. So hyperinflation has made some millionaires. I got $1 million loan in bolivars, exchanged it in the black market, and bought an apartment in New York City. The following year, I paid off the loan with $20,000. So the people that have the trifecta, or like the holy grail of having access to credit, because they have a good relationship with banks and they're probably wealthy to begin with, they can get a loan denominated in bolivars, and since the bolivar is inflating so quickly, they will pay back the loan in bolivars too, and interest rates are not going to be a match for the huge inflation that takes place. So in effect, this subsidy, this policy of printing so much money that inflation is out of control, is creating even more inequality and is entrenching more, the division between the ultra millionaires and the people who have nothing to eat. So it's really extreme. We also saw a lot of people, not a lot, but some people are using kind of scammy systems to, for example, here this something like looked like a pyramid scheme. This is one of the folks that we met. We didn't know what his occupation was, We try to get 20 people to kind of get a variety of people who have moved to Colombia and are kind of working in the informal economy, and a lot of people that are, I think, working in this informal economy are doing things like these, which are taking advantage of the people that don't know a lot better. This is an older woman that we spoke to that was that actually asked us if she should invest in these systems. Like it says here that some guy invested $100 and then after a couple of weeks he or she duplicated his money, whatever. So there are things that in the absence of stable jobs and in a new country, and with the ease of transferring money around digitally, cryptocurrency sometimes is prone to these kinds of scams, which you of course know about. But this is something that we observe even in the most vulnerable populations. So resilience. So Venezuelans have to endure constant swings between modern and primitive existences. Sometimes you may not have electricity, you may not have running water, and then that throws off your entire routine. You can't go to work anymore because you have to take care of the kid, or you have to wait until the water comes back to flush the toilets, whatever. There are many things and domino effects that affect your life when you are subject to these extreme conditions, right? So one day you have a perfectly modern existence, like very similar to living in Berlin, and then the next day you're living in, the sub-Saharan Africa or worse, right? Income from the informal economy often eclipses paid salaries. So we've observed that people more and more want to have access to the dollar or to another asset that is not subject to such high inflation. They can't always get it, but even if not, the formal salary, since they're set, at the beginning of the year or every 6 months or so on, it's not enough. They don't catch up with inflation, so people have to take on side gigs, even if they're in bolivars, to be able to cover their expenses. And this mirrors the way that the Cuban economy is run. People, if they don't have access to foreign currency, be it by having some interaction with tourists, by being a taxi driver or working at a hotel or so on, people can't really have a basic life, a basic existence, unless you live like out in the countryside and you have no need for any city life things. So this is a criminology professor who kind of prioritize her livelihood for her career, and she says, I work at a site called Digital Tasks. I spend most of my evenings doing simple tasks for students in Panama. I make more there than I do at my job as a university professor. So she's doing, she's under, she's overqualified for the work that she's doing that actually is providing most of her income. And then leaving Venezuela is like going from a sinking ship to a lifeboat with few provisions. A lot of people have a lot of hopes around how their life will improve so much when they finally leave Venezuela and go to a country where they can be safe and where they can have a normal, stable economic activity. But in truth, a lot of people lose their networks, and the networks are splintered across different countries, and they can't rely on them to find jobs. They can't rely on them to find access to banking or to safety nets. And often the state doesn't even provide them with papers, legal papers that they need to work and live and thrive. And then open. Nobody wants the bolivar, but it's necessary to survive. So this is all these bills were issued in the last 5 years or so, and they're all worthless. They were all being used to making these kind of decorations, and they're really nice, but they're not being used. Like most of them actually end up in the trash. And so you might think, well, people will just like use the dollar, right? But there's not enough cash in dollars to go around for everyone. And there certainly isn't enough access to digital forms of money. Like, you could say, oh, why don't they use that? Well, there's not enough DAI floating around in the economy. There's not enough recognition that DAI is money. There's not enough of that. So people, the most widely distributed asset that people have is the only thing that works as money, and it's the bolivar, despite all of its flaws, right? Then there's this thing that pro sellers have the power to choose the means of payment So if I have a scarce product, I will be able to say, you have to pay me using dollars in cash, or you have to pay me using Zelle, which is like a Venmo-like transfer system that they use in the United States between banks. So this is an anecdote from a guy that we met. I looked everywhere for my mom's medicine. None of the stores had it, so I looked on Instagram. I found it, but the seller only accepted Zelle. I don't have an account, so my uncle had to help me out. So it's often the case that if people don't have access to these systems, and this often means having a family member or relative or friend or whatever that lives abroad and has an account in the US, then you're locked out of the system, and you can't access maybe something that's very vital to you. And then when you live in Venezuela, this is the last one, there's no good way to save. So, you know, this is an engineering student that's 22 years old. When I'm going to the movies or my mom's going grocery shopping and change Bitcoin to bolivars at the very moment, it's easier and faster to exchange Bitcoin than dollars in cash. So this young woman started mining a couple of years ago, and her savings are all kept in Bitcoin. She doesn't mind fluctuations that much because the bolivar is certainly going down quicker than Bitcoin is going up and down. And you know, you can think of this as a way to save. It is a way to save, but it's not an ideal way to save. She would much rather have access to something that mimicked the dollar, and maybe she could use Tether, but she doesn't know about Tether, so there's a lot of gaps in understanding, and also, you know, for practical reasons, this is what she uses. And then there's Guillermo again. I pay my mate in dollars, but she doesn't want to take the bills home with her because it's unsafe, so I hold the bills for her like her bank. So he is providing the service that banks in Venezuela can provide, which is holding dollars for you, because increasingly even people that have to live or that live, you know, lower middle class or you know, more humble lives, they have to use dollars for everyday transactions, especially in the bigger cities. And this is one way that they can solve the problem of safety. I use a nonprofit sent me a monthly scholarship to my uphold account. It's in dollars. I can then use their ATM to exchange it into bolivars. So this is an example of a nascent or kind of new way to conceptualize money. And it lives in the cloud. It's not a cryptocurrency. It's uphold and ATM are both American companies, and they provide services for people, and they don't exclude Venezuelans, notably because other companies like PayPal, for example, do. So it's good that they're providing them with access, but you know, they also have their limitations. A lot of people complain about the rates at ATM, and your money is still locked in. You don't really own your money because you don't own the keys, and it's not even a cryptocurrency, but it's in a bank somewhere, and terms of services can always change. But still, it's something that can provide some level of relief to people, and it's useful. So let's jump into some opportunity areas. How might we enable access? So let's talk about having confident access, resilient access, and open access. First, we always say in the crypto community that we should avoid creating products that have trust. You know, less trust, more truth. I'm all over that. But the reality is that people do want to trust other people, and they are very used to trusting other people. So rather than do this and go extreme, I would say leverage the trust that already exists in the system. Leverage the way that people trust in each other, and trust in brands, and trust in other things, so that you can create a good experience, and then gradually you can move the needle towards them having to trust less of the system. That the features of the system might be problematic if you have to trust too much, right? So, for example, this concept is called digital banking ambassadors. So what if you could create a program that trained the tech-savvy people in the communities, and they could be kind of an ambassador for digital currency. So that way, if you leverage the trust that people have in this person, because this person is well trusted in the community, is also tech-savvy, and you train him or her to be the spokesperson or kind of the teacher for our community to start using something like Bitcoin or something like Uphold or ATM, right? And then if you do this, you will likely get more people involved and onboarded into open money system or more open money system than if you just went all out and just for example, we created a wiki when we were starting this project. We thought, oh, people are going to go to this wiki and they're going to read the instructions and everyone's going to know everything about it. People don't read wikis. And you know, if you don't have someone that really takes your hand and walks you through the process that you trust, this is not going to work. Like the trust is built one-on-one, and it's very important. Growing Circles Marketplace, so we observe that people don't often trust the offers that they're being made for products and services, and they don't have a way to know, you know, is this person trustworthy or not? So if you could have a way to determine, okay, I am 2 degrees of separation from this person, and this is like a friend of a friend, so I can maybe trust this person, that would be an improvement. And then resilient. So we have to ensure consistent access even under bad infrastructure. So related to the problems we talked earlier with the infrastructure, in Venezuela the internet goes dark sometimes. And so what if we could design systems that are not completely trusted, not completely, you know, it would be a bad idea to do it if you always had access to internet, and if the population all knew how to tamper with these systems. But the reality on the ground is that most people don't know how to change the source code of an application, and they don't know how to cheat systems in very sophisticated ways. So if you have let's say a system that, you know, communicates over Bluetooth or NFC or whatever, and you can share a secret, you can share a transaction between the merchant and the buyer. And then, you know, it's not guaranteed to work, because then maybe the merchant cheats and like tweaks the phone, and before he goes to the internet, the transaction never happened, or maybe the other person does it. It's still an improvement over what people are doing today, which is just trusting each other. Because when the internet goes down, guess what? There's no cash in Venezuela either. There's not enough bolivars in cash to go around. So most people have to pay with mobile or mobile banking. And what they do is, since they will have to go to the merchant every day anyways, they don't have that big incentive to cheat them. So this would be something that we could explore, and you know, we shouldn't be so close-minded to systems that are not fully trustless and perfectly trustless, right? And then crypto bills is an idea that, let's say, we can embed a chip onto cards, and then this has a set number of let's say, Bitcoin, and then in there, the chip has a private key, it's irretrievable, but you can verify, if you have a network connection, of course, that the funds are still there. You could use these things as bills, and it could be a replacement for you know, cash that is scarce. So it's not going to solve the whole problem, but it is a provocation or an idea that we could build upon, right? And then open is my favorite category, because what I mostly believe in and want to ensure is that systems are actually accessible to everyone in practice and not just in theory. I mean, in theory, everyone here has access to Bitcoin addresses, Ethereum addresses, everyone can send money around using that. But in practice, we're not doing that because there's a lot of friction and there's a lot of reasons why we prefer other systems, right? So, easy cash out USD Wallet is let's say it's a very easy to use wallet that you can put money in and money out, and the way that you put money in and out is by linking it with things that people already know is money, and this is essential because you can have a very good, technically very clean and very widely compatible wallet, but if you have no ways to put money in and out, people are not going to use it. So you can leverage the fact that in Venezuela there are local exchanges, and for example local bitcoins. You can buy and sell Bitcoin and bolivars. It's very easy to do, and you can buy almost any amount. So you do that, and then if there is a stablecoin that is also liquid against Bitcoin, then you can do 2 hops and move from the bolivar to a stablecoin. You don't have to really use Bitcoin if you are worried about volatility or about other features. And you know, of course, this also isn't perfect because there's the question of fees and you know how long it takes to do all the transactions and so on. But it is something that is worth exploring. We also want, I think it would be positive to have more money changers around and to increase the efficiency of money changers. We spoke with a lot of money changers that were not really good at running their business. They didn't know exactly what they had to do to become profitable. So if there is a training program, everyone in theory at least has, or actually in practice, they have access to their own jurisdiction. So they have a Venezuelan account, and they also have Bitcoin or Ether, right? So they have already 2 or 3 jurisdictions they have access to. And then if someone in the United States or in Spain or in other places, they also, even though they might not have a second bank account in another country, they also have access to their own country and Bitcoin. And that way, we could make them work as bridges, right? So technically, you can access other assets. It's just that we need to create kind of the incentives to do it, and we need to create a system that kind of ties in everything together. Universal point of sale system is inspired partly in the anecdote of the guy who didn't have Zelle, so he didn't have a way to get the medicine he needed for his mom. So it is a point of sale that's kind of weird because it's initiated by the buyer, not the seller. It's carried by the buyer. So if I want to, if the merchant tells me I only accept Zelle, I can tell him, okay, I will pay you with Zelle. But in practice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deposit the bolivars somewhere in an account, and then the system is going to make sure that the bolivars that hit the other account eventually make their way onto Zelle. And this can be done, it's very hard to do because you need to coordinate a lot of actors and you need to rely on people who might cheat the system. But this can be done, local Bitcoin has shown that this can be done with reputation systems and with incentives and escrows. So it's not totally impossible, it's just really hard. And then joint crypto accounts, if, for example, there's a wallet that you can use across family members and they all have a key and they can all spend from it, maybe the person who is most tech savvy of the family can load some money there, and you don't even have to do a transaction to send money home. You just load money and then the money's already there, and then you teach your mom, for example, how to use it. So I'm going to talk quickly about small engineering victories. Since we started doing this, we started this research in February of this year. And then since then, we've spoken with partners like Give Crypto, and Coinbase actually released a version of their wallet that is more compatible with the kinds of phones that Venezuelans have. They didn't used to do this, so this is positive. And now they're running some pilot programs where they're giving people cryptocurrency, kind of like what Give directly does. They're giving just cash or just money directly to people. And now people can actually take advantage because their phones are actually being able to run these things. And there are still very preliminary results on how effective this is, because again, people don't treat this as money yet, but it is kind of promising. And then there's this thing that I'm working on the side called the Dailywell wallet that I've received a little bit of funding from MakerDAO and from Binance X, and it's basically a very simple to use wallet that uses XDAI. You could also use other stablecoins. We're agnostic to the stablecoin that we use, but we do emphasize that whatever it is, the dollar that is there, people should be able to rely on it and to cash it out at some point. And that's one of the things that I'm working on. There's a company called Value that is on the current Y Combinator batch that is interested in possibly integrating some of these solutions, because they're sending money from Colombia to Venezuela and money's arriving in bolivars, and as soon as the money hits the family's account, the money's on fire. Right? People have to spend it right away, so this is a problem. So if they could get the money in dollars in some sort of a stable asset, that would be an improvement. Yeah, and that's it. These are our sponsors. We are a nonprofit organization, so these are people who generously donated money to make this happen. And please follow us on Twitter here.